capitalism is now the economic system of choice in the world. However, I prefer to speak of the subject as compassionate capitalism, because unless capitalism is caring, it will never meet its full obligation. I recently spoke upon this subject at a convention, and we have now decided to make it available to all of you so you can hear and see this presentation. Well, they've been talking today about what's going on in the world of Amway, and I'd like to kind of cap it up today as we talk a little bit about this system, the Amway system, and the marketing system, and the free enterprise system. You know, there was a time in the 32-year history of Amway when most everybody laughed at us. Some still do. Every day you encounter people who say, "Oh, you don't want to get in that crummy thing. Why don't you get an honest job?" And every day you say, "I'm in one, man, and you just only understood." But I've noticed even the humor is changing about Amway. Some of you saw the story of Ziggy. Maybe some of you didn't see the story of Ziggy, but in the cartoons, you know, this guy is walking up to the mountain to meet the great guru and find out the words of wisdom. And he gets up there to ask the great guru what life is all about. And the guru says, "First, have you heard about Amway?" And it just sort of brings us up to speed that everybody knows we're everywhere. I see on the Tonight Show they've been having a little fun with this again. And Jay Leno the other night made a few comments about Amway, and he said, "I see they've opened up in Hungary. And all sorts of those Amway people are over there now." And he says, "You think they had trouble getting rid of the communists?" Yeah. But it all points to the fact that they know we're around, and they know we're here to stay, and that we're committed to an ideal. But the real purpose and the real reason I want to talk to you about today is a subject called compassionate capitalism. And the reason I want to talk about that so that you have an understanding as you go around building your Amway business as to why you're building it and the cause that you represent. You know, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I sell soap and I got this marvelous sales plan," and you know the numbers and you can rattle them off. But that's not good enough. You have to know why you're in this and what you're committed to, what the cause is all about and what we stand for. And that's important, especially when people laugh at you and say, "Oh, don't be in that dumb thing," and all the other things people say or used to say. You got to know that. And so I just want to run you through a little economic stuff on the differences between socialism and capitalism and dialogue on that. You must remember that 32 years ago, when the Amway business began, and Jay and I were in the basement, when our fabulous communication system between our two basements was a hunk of wire we ran between the two houses with a button in each one, so that on our one line we had, if it came in and if it was for Jay and I picked it up, then I could ring my little button and it would buzz at his house and he'd pick it up at his house and answer it and I could hang up. Our wonderful, highly automated communication system. But that's how this business began. But more than that, it began in an atmosphere that they said God was dead, and they also declared that free enterprise was done. Capitalism was going to go down the drain. Socialism and communism were on the rise, and everybody said that's the way of the future. And whole parts of the world were either turning to it voluntarily or because of force. And countries through Africa were turning to it and choosing it. And Fidel Castro in Cuba came out of the woods, and Cuba turned communist. And everybody said that's the way it goes. And shortly thereafter, he sent his spies all over. I can only tell you here, 32 years later, Fidel better get on his bike and get out of town, because his days are numbered. And all over the world, we are watching the collapse of the communistic system and socialism. And if you study that a little bit, And if you'll recall that when Amway began, we decided we were going to stand up for capitalism, and that we were going to support the free enterprise system, and we were going to wave the American flag, and we weren't going to apologize for patriotism, and we weren't going to apologize for success, and we weren't going to apologize for making money or achieving our dreams. And we decided to take that message out. And that was a time when it wasn't popular. And they said that would fail, and we should all be equally poor together. And so all those nations that stuck with communism and socialism ended up in a state of poverty. And they kept driving it down to where their countries failed, their people suffered. And as we have discovered now, as we've entered East Germany for 40 years, those countries stood still and went backwards. And all the rest of the free world moved forward in a new and dynamic way. But they went down and down and down. And that's why while we sit here and we talk a little bit about the expansion of Amway around the world, we brag about, wow, we're in Hungary, and look what happened, and look what happened in Korea, and look what's going to happen when we go to Czechoslovakia, and we look what happened in Mexico, and all of our Mexican friends who are here. Where's Mexico here today? I know there's a whole contingent from Mexico. That's great. Viva Mexico! That's great. But you see, all those countries sat still and we moved away. And you have to ask yourself why. What are the fundamental differences that allowed us to move on and those countries to move down or backwards or stand still? And I put it down into four kind of simple short phrases. And I put them down that the first reason that capitalism prevailed and communism failed was freedom, or in their case, the lack of freedom. They lost all their rights. We speak of freedom and the simple right to own our own business. They couldn't do such a simple thing. The second thing we had in those systems was no reward for performance. And it didn't matter whether you worked hard or worked not so hard. In fact, if you worked too hard, everybody said, don't work so hard because then you make me look bad. So everybody was equal, and there were no rewards for working harder. And the third thing you found in that equation was that there was no reward and no recognition. Because once you deny economic benefit by working hard, you also deny any benefit of recognition that you've done something and you're to be honored and you're to be saluted. And the last thing of my four is that they denied all their people any hope of ever getting ahead or aspiring to greatness. And they treated them all like one glob of humanity. And as we've seen, it all collapsed. And so as you contrast that and the total failure of that system around the world, in one day it began in Europe when 56,000 people broke through the wall of Hungary and spread into West Germany and on into Austria, and a path that had been blocked for years. 56,000 people in one day. That's only 2 years ago. We forgot all that. You can still remember some of those people with all their possessions on their back or in their car. After 40 years of being in prison, broke out. And it happened. But the failure of it today is very obvious. And then Tiananmen Square occurred, and we began to see it exhibited in that side of the world. And then, of course, the wall fell down, and you've seen what happened with Amway and the Amway business in that part of the world, is those people were seeking hope, a reward, recognition, and some freedom. Those simple, fundamental things. And people said, that's the system I want. We want to be free. We want to get rewards. We want recognition, and we want to have some hope. And if not for ourselves, at least for our children, so that we have some place to look forward to. And so we watched that all move around the world as those things happened. It was fascinating to me to think of Ronald Reagan, because the former President of the United States had some things to say about it, and he said them 10 years ago right now. When everybody still talks about how good communism was going, and great professors of economics in our great universities of this country were saying things about how wonderful things were behind the Iron Curtain. And I got some of those quotes here. And this is Lester Thoreau, from the professor of economics from MIT. He said this in 1989, 2 years ago. No one can deny, speaking of Russia, that it has made great economic progress. I presume he has a doctor's degree. This was by John Kenneth Galbraith. You've heard of him. Another famous Keynesian economist from Harvard in the New Yorker magazine in 1984. The Soviet economy has made great national progress in recent years. And another one said it is a vulgar mistake to think that most people in Eastern Europe are miserable. And that was stated by Paul Samuelson, a Nobel laureate and a professor of economics also from MIT. Sounded like MIT was really screwed up. At least their economics guys were. And then this actor from California who, by accident, in their opinion, became president of the United States, made a statement 10 years ago in 1981 when he spoke at the University of Notre Dame at a commencement address in May. And this was his statement. And he was forecasting things to come that few of us understood then. And he said this: "The years ahead will be great ones for our country, for the cause of freedom and for the spread of civilization. The West will not contain communism. It will transcend communism. We will not bother to denounce it. We'll dismiss it as a sad, bizarre chapter in human history whose last pages are even now being written." The President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, 10 years ago. Well, those of us in the Amway business, we knew that then too, didn't we? Because we were standing out there and fighting for it and believing in it. Because we had learned to believe in ourselves and our ability to make a difference. And because you had accepted the cause that this organization was built around. And that's why for Jay and myself and our families, and having been through wonderful, difficult times, tough times, ridiculing times. We had people ride by that plant. I had one the other day said to me, "I've been riding by that plant for 30 years, and for 30 years I was saying it would never last." I said, "I'm giving up. I finally think you're going to make it, you guys." Oh, I think we're going to make it all right. Well, why are we making it? For the very same reasons that communism failed. We offer freedom, the right to own your own business, do your own thing. Some of you that are in this Amway business are doing things nobody could pay you to do. It's your job, regular job, asked you to go out nights and talk like that and meet in living rooms like you were sneaking around town. You could say, "You got to be out of your tree. I wouldn't do anything like that." But you're doing it because it's your business and you're free. And it's amazing what you'll do to get ahead when you have the option instead of somebody telling you what to do. You're doing it because we have rewards in this business, financial rewards. And as some of you know, the first day of September, we'll add some more rewards to this Amway plan and extend it to all of you. And we're not only adding those rewards here, we did it worldwide. And Jay and I sat down one day and said, we're going to add to this plan. We're going to do it for everybody in the world of Amway. And those of you who are in a leader positionship of this business know that over the past few months when we talked about writing a little bonus check, we did it to everybody all over the world of Amway and said, you're all in this together. And, of course, we continue with recognition. We got so many trips, I hardly know whether I'm coming or going these days. Some of you don't know whether you're going to a meeting or coming home from one. But it's out of that concept of recognizing achievement, things denied to the other people in those worlds so much. It was fun the other day when Doug and Helen and I and Maria were in Scotland and visiting with the European leadership. And Peter and Eva were there and several people from East Germany who in the first time in their life were coming into the free world, staying in a fancy hotel. I tell you, they had probably the one and only suit they had. Now they looked like $1 million. And were they having fun, and were we having fun with them? as they discovered this wonderful world out here? Well, recognition, rewards, freedom, and most of all, hope that you could do better and your children could do better and there was some place for you to advance to. And so we kept moving forward. But what I want to do really is take you back in time a little bit. You know, many, many years ago, in fact, 30 years ago, I began giving a speech called Selling America, talking about the achievements of the free enterprise system. I gather one or two of you heard that tape over the years. I don't know how many are out there, and I'm just grateful they listened. But that speech was born at a time of ridicule. I gave it in high schools, I spoke to commencements, and I talked about the greatness of America. You say, why would you have to do that? Because everybody said it was going down. And I went around trying to tell people it wasn't going down, it was going up. It had achieved more than all those other places in the world had ever thought about. But we had a mindset that said we weren't doing good, and we talked otherwise. And then we got into it, and we bought the economic exhibit from an organization being played in the New York World's Fair, which described the free enterprise system and how it functioned. And so I want to add a new element to that little formula that I've given in many places, and many of you have learned, as to why free enterprise excels where socialism and communism fails. And so I'm going to do that for you in just a few quick seconds. But I want you to know the reason for this talk is I'm adding a dimension to it. When I look back at the 32-year history of Amway, I say, why has this business gone forward? Why in this last year of economic recession for many, many parts of this economy in this country has this company increased its sales by $800 million? Unbelievable. Well, we know who sells the product. It's you and people like you all over the world. We understand that part. But what is it that caused people to turn to this business? And I believe it is because of the loving, caring attitude of the people. But while we talk numbers, I want you to get a little quick history lesson on why and how free enterprise works. And then I want to add that element to it for you so you'll see the new formula. In all the years that I gave that old talk, we always did it this way. We talked about MMW. That is man's material welfare. We are talking simply here about the economic system and what provides food, shelter, and clothing for people. How do we get cars? Or how do we get food? How do we get furniture? How do we build houses? What makes these things happen? And why does the free enterprise system and the countries that practice it have so much more than those that don't? And even countries like Mexico, where while they were close to us, they never shared in this concept. And this concept is now moving there, and I'm grateful the free trade bill was passed so Mexico can catch up and begin to join this exciting world. And their presidents begin to adopt some of these ideas that have been here so long and they're so close. So what creates wealth? What creates food? Why do we have enough to eat? Where does it come from? Everything you and I have, in an economic sense, comes from natural resources. It comes from the earth or it grows on the earth. Everything you have. If I have a suit on, it happens to be wool, it comes from animals that are on the earth. If my shoes are leather, they come from animals. If I got some socks on, they may come from cotton. My underwear is, I don't know, it's from someplace. Oh, I know, it's from the laundry. The tie is silk, which comes from animals. The food I ate, if I ate potatoes, it comes from under the earth. If I had some fruit, it came from trees that grow on top of the earth. Everything you have, the steel seats you're sitting on, if they're steel, they come from iron ore in the earth. If your car has aluminum in it, it comes out of bauxite within the earth. Or it may have steel in it from iron ore. The list goes on. You just have to go home and fuss with that. Everything you and I have, eat, use every day, God put in the earth in the first place. It's all there. But it just lays there, just like a field lays there, until somebody plants it and cultivates it and harvests it. So it's the combining of the natural resources with human energy that give us the products we need to live with. It's a very simple formula. It's practiced everywhere in the world. And none of that explains the differences. It merely explains how it happens. We take iron ore, we dig it out of the ground, we melt it and bend it around, and we form it, and next thing we know, we got a car. Or we've got a piece of furniture. Or we cut down some trees, and we cut them up and rearrange them and glue them and pound them together, and next thing you know, we got a house. Human energy combined with natural resources. A very simple process. It goes on all over the world. But in a free enterprise economy, that element is added that goes over here. It's the use of tools. It is the combining of human energy and the multiplication of human energy with tools. Notice it's a multiplication sign here and a simple addition sign here. When you give a person a tool, if a man is hoeing and working in a field and trying to grow food and working with a hoe, he may be able to feed himself and one or two other people. Give him a tractor and a little fertilizer, and he can feed 100 other people. In the United States today, between 1% and 2% of our people live and work on farms, and they feed everybody in the United States and much of the world beside. Yes, I know we got good land. Yeah, all the farmers, you can salute them and be thankful for them. Fertilizers, storage areas, shipping, transportation, all the tools that make that thing work. And you put together combines and harvesting machines and all the other things. Up here in northern Michigan, we used to send people in to pick cherries, and they went up in a tree and picked cherries. Today they do a little thing, they grab the trunk of the tree, they shake the dickens out of it, and all the cherries fall down, they roll in a bin, and they're gone. We don't have any cherry pickers anymore, or any cotton pickers anymore in the same old way. Why? We have tools. But the difference is not that the socialists and communists didn't have tools. They have tools too. The difference is the tools that they owned were owned by the state. When the tools of production are owned by the individual people, they always produce more and they always last longer. The examples are simple. You take better care of your car than you do when you rent one. Your children take better care of their car if they have one than they do of your car. So my kids were growing up, they washed their car. I said, why don't you wash mine? They said, Dad, that's not my car. I understand. I've had rental cars driving on the highway one day coming out of L.A. I said to the guy driving, he says, cut in, it's a rental car. I wouldn't do that with my car. Traffic was jammed up. The examples are endless. Public housing projects collapse and are a disaster because the people who live in them don't own them, they don't possess them. And so it is with tractors, which the farmers own. They check the oil. They make sure they're going to continue to run because it's their tractor. And so old equipment lasts longer and performs better when it's run by the owner. And so it is with our homes. When we own a house, we take better care of it than if we rent one. And that's just human stuff. Nothing special about it. But our system permits that. And after having made that speech 1,000 times and talked about it longer than that, that's the essential difference is who owns the tools of production. It seems so simple. You wonder why the rest of the world couldn't get on. But there is one problem. And it's a problem the socialist system will have a problem getting over. The other day I had some kids from Hungary, and I was visiting with them for breakfast. And they were talking about it, and we came up with the idea. They said, well, we're going to be free enterprise. I said, well, I hope so. You have one big thing to deal with. You have the factor of jealousy and envy to deal with. For all these years, you've told yourself you're all the same, and you all got comfortable in the poverty. Your big test is going to be whether you can see if some can move ahead who are willing to work harder, or whether you're just going to reach out and try and drag them down because they make you look bad. And you have spent 40 years dragging down anybody who reached and exceeded the quota. And now you're going to have to learn to applaud them instead of ridiculing them. And that's why I love this business. That's why I love you. When you see somebody who reaches crown or whatever, we all cheer their achievement. We don't ridicule their achievement. And in this business, we cheer the achievement because we know that if we pay the price, we can have it too. And that's what that system in that part of the world has got to learn. My concern, however, as we move forward is that those new economies, discovering free enterprise, we'll forget the third element that's important to that, and that is what the title of this speech is, the compassionate capitalism. It's not enough for those countries to learn capitalism. They must learn the compassionate elements of capitalism. This country, the United States, was built on a sense of conscience, on its Judeo-Christian heritage. Most of the countries in which we work don't necessarily have that. Most of the countries don't give any benefits if you don't need credits for making a contribution, for example. Those are unique things to our economy, but those are things we have to share and build into our Amway businesses wherever we go. And that's what I believe runs this business. It is the concept of caring and compassion for the people you live with and are associated with. The other day I read a clipping from Australia, and it was a newspaper story, and the newspaper story was not very kind to the Amway people. It took them to task and said they went to this meeting, and all they talked about was driving bigger cars and spending money and having jewelry. And that's all the reporter heard. But in my view, that is not what ever built the Amway business. Oh, I know you want economic reward, but what drives the Amway business is a caring attitude for those who have needs and who are hurting and who are hungry and who need your loving care. You have people in your business who need your help. And so I want to put some brackets around the old formula and just stick a little C over here, because I believe that is the glue that makes our business function. And when we learn that, and in our experience and looking back at our 32 years, I think we know that this business has been held together by dedicated people who really understood that, even though we never defined it. In the early days of this business, we focused. We did things with a sales plan. You can't prosper at the expense of the people you sponsor. There is no profit in the act of sponsoring. Thousands of companies have tried to follow us, and they all do. They grab the money as soon as they sign them up, instead of being committed to the well-being of the people that join them. Into the very roots and the grounding of the Amway plan was that precept that the first thing you have to do is make sure the people below you win. And that's why you begin that process in the act of sponsoring. And that's why so many of your uplines spend more time worrying about your achievement than you spend worrying about your achievement. Your directs and your diamonds and those people, they stew all day and all night about how to make you successful. Because this plan is oriented to helping the lowest man climb the ladder. As long as we keep our focus on that, we'll do well. And we've got to make... When I left after the first meeting today, I walked out and some lady stopped me. She said, "I can't tell you how happy I was to hear what you said today." She said, "In my group, all they talked about was making money, driving bigger cars." And she said, "Nobody ever talked to me about what you're talking about. This is what makes this thing work. This is what the heart and soul of the Amway business is all about. How come I never heard it?" Well, maybe some of us never understood it. Maybe we're just catching on to why God has showered His blessings on this business, because He became aware of the fact that in this business is not just a sales plan with nice numbers and 3% and 4% and worldwide sponsorship, but because this is a business concerned with the well-being of the people in it. And it is more than just whether we're concerned with the people who are in the business. It is more than whether we just tell people you can make a lot of money in this business without saying to them, you're going to work your buns off. And you're going to have a lot of discouragement. But if you want to pay the price and you want to have the joy of achievement, then join us. Instead of just saying, oh, you just make a lot of money and drive back and forth to the bank. That's not what drives the business. The business is driven by a compassionate and caring attitude. And that's why it's something we must carry forward as we move forward in the world. As we move out into the world, it's going to become more important than ever that we develop the compassionate attitude for everybody that we touch. That means you'll be giving. Some of you give to Easter seals. Some of you give to gospel films. Some of you give to your churches. Some of you give to your synagogue. Some of you give to things I never knew about or thought about. Some of you give to Easter seals in an unbelievably great way. You support various causes because you have a compassionate and caring heart. And it is my belief that that's what drives this business. And that's why some of you stay in this business even when you feel like quitting, because you know somebody really deeply cares about your well-being and your achievement. And as long as we keep that as a priority in our business, we all are going to be winners whether we make a lot of money or whether we don't. We're going to begin to have a new attitude towards our children and our families. Many of you are in this business unselfishly. You have joined this organization so you can help your children get a better education and do better things in their life. And that's why you have a responsibility in this business to be an achiever, so you can be a hero and an example for others to follow. Some of you live in communities where not many people are making it. And you can talk to them all day. But if you really want to be a wonderful hero for them, go ahead and achieve in this business, and don't tell them, show them. And when you show them that you can do it, then they'll know they can do it. And I know we have a lot of international people here, from Mexico to all the other markets in the world. But I can tell you something, we never did well in any foreign market because a bunch of Americans came over there and did well. We did well in those markets when the people who lived there made the plan live for them. And when it lived there, then it lived. And you have the Lows over here from the UK, and when they began to develop a leadership role in the UK, then the English people said, if they can do it, we can do it. And they became a role model, an example for them. And the M&Ms over here did that. And I see we got Karu and Ito and Eric over here from Japan, Crown Ambassadors. All these people doing significant things. They possessed the plan and made it their own. And then the other people said, if they can do it here, we can do it here. And that's what's going to happen in all those markets around the world. And I remember in Australia, Bruce, we spent 5 years losing money in Australia until we began to develop the first directs in Australia. And when they took the lead, they set the pace. And that's why the number one measure you have to be a compassionate capitalist is to make money and achieve, then have a loving and tender heart to help others do it. And you're going to teach people how to succeed in life, and more than just in the Amway business. The other day I had 2 grandchildren. One of them was up here. They were both here. I don't know if they've gone to sleep or left, but Dick's little girl and Betsy's little girl and Dan and Pam's little girl, and they were both over at our house, and they were in the swimming pool. And they were having a big time. There were 2 rafts in there, and there's a sliding board there, and it was so fascinating when I wondered why communism failed and capitalism succeeded. And I watched these 2 little girls having a good time and fighting over the life rafts. And I kept hearing these words, and they echo around in that room. And they kept saying, "It's mine, it's mine." And all of you laugh because you've heard all your children say it. And they fight over their bicycle, and if a cousin comes to call, they still say, "It's mine." "No, share your toy." "No, it's mine, Mommy." And everybody thought capitalism was created someplace over there because some economists thought so. It's right built into everybody. There's something about owning it yourself. And that's why the Amway business does well, because it's yours. It's mine. And there is just something built into all of us that we treat it differently and feel great about it. And that's why you must learn that fundamental principle. And that's why you grant freedom to people to use it and possess it and make it theirs. The other thing I noticed about them, they had the little slide up there, and neither one of them wanted to go down laying on their stomach and hit the water. Well, they were both learning to sit down, but they wouldn't go face down. And then one of them says, "Okay, Grandpa, I'll do it." As soon as that happened, the other one couldn't get up there fast enough to do it. Then it was a fight to see who could do it first. And that's an instinctive thing in all of us. We don't want to be left out. We want to excel. But if there's somebody else around who's going to get ahead of us in our system, we're going to try to excel. And that's why you can see it's so fundamental to everything we stand for in the business. And then the last part of it, and then we'll close, was a little cry we heard all the time. They kept saying the following words: "Watch me, watch me. Mommy, watch me," demanding attention. And if the girls, Helen and Betsy or whoever was there, were sitting talking, or Pam, they kept screaming it. They were going to come down that slide face first, and they were demanding attention. Watch me. Throughout the world today, are people dying to have somebody watch them achieve. And that's what you and I have to do. We have to be the cheerleaders. And when they say, watch me, sponsor, watch me, Mommy, watch me, Grandpa, we got to be the number one in the cheering section of helping struggling people become achievers. It's just in there from childhood on to have somebody appreciate me and to pay attention to me. And when we begin to be the force that moves around the world, paying attention to people, cheering them on, applauding them for their achievements, everybody rises and has a higher level of achievement than the world has ever seen. And let's us go into this world and touch this world and be the number one group that says to everybody, we're watching and we believe in you. Thank you so much for joining us.